And it's now time for the most awaited panel discussion. I now call upon Dr. Anil D. Cruz, sir, for moderating the panel on parotid tumors. Non-salivary glands. Non-parotid tumors.
If you keep it non-salivary, non-parotid, you can finish and go for lunch.
Sir, just call the panelists and we can
So
introduce
they know
yourself.
that. Bolo.
Okay, I'll like to call the panelists on stage, please. Dr. Puri Patel, ma'am. Dr. Neerav Trivedi, sir. Dr. Karan Gupta, sir. Dr. Kinchal Jani, sir. Dr. Pankaj Modi, sir. Dr. Nayan Gupta, sir. Dr. Satakshi Sanyal, ma'am. And Dr. K.K. Thankappan, sir.
Good afternoon, everybody. Again, organizers' testimony to a great meeting. To have a house full on Sunday afternoon is very good. An engaging audience. And panelists, that's partly because you all are panelists. They chose them very, very carefully. So we have to live up to that billing. So keep your comments brief, make it informative. We'll make enough questions. I have not many slides. I decided to start this panel because it's a very vast topic. Non-parotid salivary tumors. By opening the discussion to y'all, and each one of y'all can make one observation on this and we can develop a discussion on that. The only thing what I could do is start with this one case because we have Dr. Modi, who is a senior surgeon, and general surgeon, and submandibular gland would come into his field of discussion. So in respect to his seniority, sir, we are starting with case number 3 for you. You are in a general surgical practice. The 65-year-old male walks in with the left submandibular region swelling of 3 months duration. That's the picture. You can forget the FNAC report, I put it up. What would you do? What would be the advice to everybody sitting in the audience on how you would work up this patient?
Even without any report, this looks large and malignant. There is one more observation I can see, the platysma sign is positive. That is what I teach all my students, a vertical line that suggests it has to be a malignant. Clinically also it looks like
So
that.
I think 2 great points, and that's what experience tells us. They can just look at a slide and make a diagnosis. They don't need pathology, they don't need radiology. 65-year-old male coming with the neck swelling, probability of malignancy is 80%, even if there was no platysma sign.
Yeah.
And the platysma sign is a very, very good pick-up point. The platysma is infiltrated, that's why you see those little things standing out there. So malignancy. Sir, what will you do?
Yes, investigate for, as we have already put up a FNAC.
FNAC done, poly-differentiated carcinoma.
And MRI for the local part.
MRI done.
Yeah.
I'll show you an imaging. That's the imaging. It's not an MRI, unfortunately. It's a CT. That's the picture.
Yeah. So it looks like it is infiltrating, definitely. So it is not my cup of tea, I would say.
It's not?
My cup of tea.
Not your cup of tea. Kaustubh's cup of tea.
Yeah, I think so.
Or
Because I will send
Kaustubh, in Gujarat, you don't say cup of tea. We say glass of wine, sir.
No.
Sorry. Sorry, I don't want to get arrested. Okay, go ahead.
So, you know, this panel is non-parotid salivary gland, and that's the reason why we are discussing this. But the first thing for a submandibular gland swelling, malignant, non-malignant, oral cavity examination
Why did you
is
jump
first.
and answer? You're the...
Oh, I thought.
I've got this. Inka tang kaun खींचेगा? Kaustubh, you spoilt my panel. Okay, folks. He's let the cat out of the bag. But anyway, someone quickly tell how will you work up? There are a lot of youngsters, senior people. Kaustubh's point is very, very valid. That look whether it's metastatic. That's what, actually it was poorly differentiated salivary tumor. I removed the word salivary to elucidate that point. Go ahead.
Obviously, this patient requires a very thorough clinical examination, including the oral cavity, oropharynx, and the neck examination and nasopharynx, to look for any other lesions like a primary, and this is a metastatic.
So great. So we'll rule out a primary, that this is not a metastatic node, and primary sites you look for?
Mainly oropharynx, the floor of the mouth.
Oral cavity and oropharynx to some extent for level 1, both normal.
Right, if that is the case, clinically I would like to know the skin involvement, probably the skin is involved. Then I would like to know the fixity of the tumor and the fixity specifically to the mandible.
Whether it's operable you're trying to find out?
Correct.
Great. And then?
Since FNAC is there, I would like to do a cross-sectional imaging. That would, in my book, be an MRI scan and a CT chest. Since it is a poorly differentiated carcinoma, also we may consider a PET scan occasionally to get a whole body screening of distant
So
metastasis.
quickly, this point didn't come up in the discussion. How good is PET for salivary neoplasms? So PET
guess
for
it is-
metastatic disease, I agree. Purvi is all ready with the answer. Come on, Purvi.
So, sir, whenever we see a patient with a high-grade histology and when the surrounding structures are involved, age of the patient, I think it is recommended to do a PET CT scan in T3, T4 lesions to rule out distant metastatic lesions as well.
But KK might say that I can't afford, I just want a plain CT of the chest. Satakshi.
Sir, just to add what KK sir just said, clinically one more information before the imaging I like to gather is that marginal mandibular function for this patient.
Clinical examination.
Yes, sir. And for imaging, PET will be indicated for T3, T4 tumors, large tumors, telltale sign of malignancy in lymph node. And as ESMO suggests, in adenoid cystic carcinomas also we may consider PET. But by and large,
But why does ESMO suggest?
their philosophy is adenoid cystics have a propensity of lung metastasis, so we might
So
as
for
well in the
distant
first.
mets you can do a PET. So the reason I'm asking this question, and it is just general and it didn't get covered in most of the topics, many people reflexly today for any malignancy ask for PET. So forget that we are non-parotid, let's say parotid, we are treating salivary glands. Where does PET stand in the diagnostic algorithm? So if you've got ultrasound, CT, MR, PET, would PET be higher? Would PET be low down? I agree with all the points you all have all made.
So, if you're just talking about salivary malignancies, then PET might be a little lower than your as a first investigation of choice. MR might score higher. But so for this case in particular, if the FNA wasn't there and you were seeing this patient for the first time, and advising a PET in this patient might not be wrong, because there is a chance this might be a metastasis from an oral cavity or an oropharyngeal malignancy as well. So from that perspective, getting a PET done for both metastatic as well as trying to find a primary
As
should
an
be okay.
unknown primary, I agree PET is of choice. But agreed, point well taken if you have an unknown. But quickly I'm going to make few points about PET in salivary neoplasms. PET scores very low in salivary neoplasms. They are benign conditions that are PET positive. Vijay is telling the answer. Wardens can be PET positive. So don't look, and yesterday in one of the discussions someone said that we can do a PET and make a diagnosis whether it's benign and malignant. It's incorrect. Wardens can be PET positive and low grade salivary neoplasms can be PET negative. And the third reason is the spatial resolution of PET is less than MRI. So whenever you're using to salivary, a PET is low down. You can use it for distant metastatic workup. Okay, so this comes as poorly differentiated salivary carcinoma treatment. It moves a little, KK. Myelohyoid is slightly involved. No, that's in response to you. Maybe Nirav can ask, Nayan can ask. We must hear everybody's voice today.
So, if there are no nodes on ipsilateral or contralateral side, non-metastatic,
No. If you say no nodes, tell us why. You should tell, you must say the opposite nodes I won't operate.
So basically I'm looking, so we know primary.
Little louder and the
tumor-
mic closer to you.
So basically we are looking at a tumor that's malignant, locally confined. Looks like, as you said, slightly mobile, so operability seems fine. Now we have to decide, the primary tumor needs to go through surgery, but what type of neck dissection, ipsilateral, contralateral. So definitely I will do an ipsilateral neck dissection along with the primary resection, and depending upon my imaging findings about the contralateral neck, I would consider doing
Okay, the same tumor is 2 centimeters, it's a salivary gland neoplasm. Will you do neck?
malignancy. Malignancy, depending upon.
We don't know. That boy presented, no, it's a Milan 4, 4B. If it's straightforward, easy questions, na, kya karoge?
Sir, if it's a low-grade malignancy, then we can observe, but on a practical clinical perspective, it's in the neck. You are anyway going to have an incision there.
So I'm
And we will
going
start-
back. How often are you confident that your pathologist can tell you low or high grade on the FNAC? They can't tell you. They told yesterday. Who was asking that question again and again? Abhishek was asking, Shubhda madam.
So I agree with you, and that's why I said on clinical grounds, if it's malignancy and it's submandibular gland, when you are putting the same incision, I would do at least a 2, 3, 4, 5A.
Anybody has a different view, wants to reinforce Nirav, different thoughts? Nayan? Okay, go ahead.
Just for an argument, the indications for adjuvant treatment is same as the indications for neck adressal. Okay,
No,
in salivary tumors, indications for adjuvant radiotherapy.
no.
I mean, it is
If I
high.
do a T1, T2 and the neck is negative, I won't give it.
So that's what I'm telling you. The indications for adjuvant treatment is high.
I'm doing
high
a
T-
neck treatment, but I'm not using it for adjuvant. So maybe you'll have to qualify that statement. It's a very bold statement.
No, the indications for adjuvant treatment on or neck addressal is T3 high stage tumors, T3, T4 tumors or high grade tumors. They are the same.
Granted.
So ultimately, if by doing the neck alone and sparing the neck, if it comes out to be a low grade tumor or a small tumor, you may not address the neck.
So I'm going to,
Ultimately, if it comes out to be a larger tumor or a high grade tumor, you will have to give an adjuvant treatment that will take care of the N0 neck that is left behind. Just for an argument's sake, like.
no arguments. Here we have a consensus, man. They called us for consensus.
I want to make a comment on
Wait.
this.
First my panelists, otherwise they'll get angry with this Satakshi, otherwise she won't post my patient tomorrow.
So I disagree with him.
You agree with him?
Disagree with him.
Disagree.
with him because the indication for adjuvant radiotherapy will be if the neck is positive also. So not only for a high grade tumor or for a T3, T4 tumor. If there are nodes
No,
positive
I might disagree with you also. I'm coming to you in a minute. Hang on. Am I confusing it, Satakshi? And then Ravi.
Sir, just to mention what was just discussed, for this patient probably to do a neck dissection will be better because in salivary gland tumors we will rely little less on pathology and more on our clinical finding and imaging. There is obvious skin fixity or closeness to
No,
mandible.
2 centimeters. Skin fixity and all, no debate. 2 centimeter tumor. Salivary, submandibular. We are expanding the discussion, not one case. Will you all do the neck in submandibular salivary gland tumor? Ravi?
No, I don't think we should go so far ahead into this intellectual discussion. The very fact that you are dealing with a submandibular region, you are going to play in the submandibular triangle, you are dealing with a malignancy. What prevents you from going and at least doing level 1, 2? It's a logical question.
So,
We are not going to add to the morbidity
so
at all.
in the interest of time, Chairman sir, you have to speak. Nahi to home 10 will be
No, the
out.
thing is that I would like to disagree with Nirav. I don't think in a 2 centimeter lesion, malignant N0, you would do a level 5. We will do level 1.
Okay. Acha, now let's not all disagree with each other. Point being made. Actually, neck is lower down in the discussion, but I said as the discussion unfolds, we will take it there. in a submandibular gland, you're going to take a neck incision. The neck is opened. It's malignant. You must do 1 through 3. Please don't have any debate in your mind. I can quote figures that the incidence of metastasis can vary up to 35% in small tumors. It's open, it's sitting there. Why you don't want to do it? Kinjal will give you another case to give radiotherapy to. We don't want to not do N0 neck.
That is what
So
my point
the
was.
message is in submandibular gland, malignant tumor, please always do the neck in
So sir, just a
surgery.
point, an intraglandular.
Argument or adding a point? Don't argue.
Just a counterpoint to it.
Sure.
A 1 centimeter intraglandular sump in submandibular gland feels hard on taking out the gland. Would you still go 1 to 3, or you would clear 1 with the surrounding lymph nodes along with it and be over with it?
Moot point. There is no morbidity of doing 2 and 3, but I won't swing on the accessory nerve, take out 2B, 1 centimeter intragranular. We practice in small hospitals. We don't see this 1 centimeter.
We are smaller than you, so anyway.
Acha.
So,
I mean, we are in community-based hospitals, not bol.
No. The first indication of doing elective neck dissection is entry into the neck. Much before everything. So it is mandatory. If you have entered the neck, you do the neck dissection.
Point well taken, and that's why today, and now we'll go into parotid, because these points were not covered. Even in parotid neoplasms, please don't read guidelines and come here and hammer them that this last line is not there, first line is there, not there. Today, most people go ahead and do the neck even in parotid neoplasms. The reason is very simple. When you open for salivary gland, the digastric is looking at you. There are nodes at level 2 and 3. Take them out. It's over. There's no debate. And if you have frozen, do frozen, complete the neck. And when you do level 1 in parotid, you've already done half of level 1, the most difficult part of level 1, saving the marginal mandible going up. The bloody submandibular gland is going from below the mandible. Just gumao the cautery, take it out, your neck is done. You need not take out level 1. You might argue with me, there will be a bigger deformity. But please remember, science has changed. And if you read most guidelines, this 1, 2 grade, asking pathologists, bata, high grade, low grade, it came from Armstrong's paper, 474 patients, MSKCC, 20, 30 years back. Science has moved, do 2 and 3. Who doesn't disagree with me? Who agrees with me? Where's Aditya? Aditya? Bol. Last for you, when they were disagreeing, you said you have to leave the hall. So that's why I'm taking you on my side, na? We won't give them lunch. Done. Any points on submandibular that we've not covered?
Sir, I am not the expert in this, but what I said, we face many time a problem. We have already operated submandibular considering the benign FNAC report is included. We have removed the gland and surrounding you. Now
Great question.
Now the report comes as a very 1 centimeter.
Lovely. That was my next question. So I operated this very, how should I say, socialite doctor in Delhi. Actually, I didn't operate. Deepak will get angry with me. It's someone else operated. Came to me with the diagnosis of a submandibular gland excision. Socialite doctor. She didn't want scar. She didn't want marginal to go. Operated by a fairly decent general surgeon. And the report comes as adenoid cystic. 1.8 centimeters submandibular gland excision, comes to me for second opinion. Panelists. Exactly what Dr. Modi, Nayan.
Because we face this problem as a general surgeon.
Sir, I told, absolutely correct. I face this problem very often. Wait for those
21 days or 1 month to subside. Get a USG done at the moment the patient has come to you. Wait for a better imaging after 1.5 months. Once we have...
So I'm going to stop you here again in the interest of time. In Dushyant, where's Dushyant? Dushyant's case, he kept making a point again and again. The surgeon took it out piecemeal. The specimen was piecemeal. अधूरा छोड़ने का चांस हाई था. इधर पूरा submandibular gland निकाला. Why you want to wait 3 weeks?
The edema would not give us the right...
Are you making a point for re-surgery?
Yeah.
Or are you making a point for the patient to go
For
to
a re-surgery and the radiotherapy. Radiotherapy anyways adenoid system.
Okay, 3 weeks later, there is some haziness, not sure between post-treatment residue, inflammation or residual disease to correlate clinically. My radiologists give these kind of reports. 3 weeks later. अभी वो बोलेगा रेजिड्यू तो पैनल खत्म.
Convince the patient for surgery first in the interest of life.
And what will you do?
Life. I mean, explore the tumor bed and be sure that there's nothing left.
Then you will delay radiotherapy for another 6
Another
weeks.
15 days and you'll be your...
How many agree to explore a TX bed without histological proof?
No, Anil, there is a caveat. These margins were clear, this was intraglandular.
He must ask me, na?
Sir,
So sir, you can talk to a surgeon and pathologist as well.
See, this talking to surgeon, many people are telling, no surgeon admits to his.
Yes, that's what I was going to say, sir.
Except the Dutch surgeons, according to
If
Vijay.
I am asked, yes, I have removed superficial, deep part, everything. No surgeon will say I have removed partially or
कोई नहीं बोलेगा.
It's
I
very difficult.
totally agree. I phone all surgeons. I've stopped phoning them.
I have a... As you study the path report,
I have a trick and a tip to tell you.
Tip and a trick?
Yeah.
Wow.
I would call that surgeon. I would not say whether you have removed it completely or not. My question would be, do you think we should give radiation? If he says yes, you know.
But 1 minute. 1 minute. The tip is good, but there's a trick in what you answered. If the person is a general surgeon, he won't know indications for radiotherapy.
No, that is the
It's operated by Dr. Modi's junior.
That is the trick. That is the trick. He doesn't know whether radiation to be given or not, but he knows that something needs to be done. He will say, yes, give radiation.
Kaustu, I would like to differ. As a general surgeon point of view.
No, you are not a general surgeon.
So Dr. Modi and me of the same vintage, we are answering together the same.
He will tell. He will tell that I have done
What I want
supervision.
to make upon is that supposedly you believe general surgeon and he has completely removed the gland, then what is to be done?
Yeah, that is a different question. That is what I am asking.
Yeah.
So one thing, you may talk to the surgeon, we are just joking a little bit, but don't base your opinions on someone else. You can take detailed operative notes, you can do that, you can talk to pathologists, what Vijay is saying. Ravi.
No, it is very important for us to realize that this is, Anil is making very lighter comment in lighter vein, that and all that. Extra parotid salivary tumors are very, very dangerous tumor. They are biologically aggressive tumor and we need to be very careful. You have talked to the general surgeon and I am sure the general surgeon would tell you the truth, but it is very, very difficult for a general surgeon to have courage to go under the mylohyoid, take the whole part of the duct, and unknowingly in a silodentis you leave some tissue behind, and therefore it is not that the general surgeon is not wanting. Sometimes the expertise demands you to go literally under the thing, and that is not done, and therefore it is important that you dwell on this issue. You probably, nobody takes photographs on the pathology sheet, but it is important that we realize that irrespective of your best intentions, the general surgeons would not go under the mylohyoid muscle and take the extra gland which turns into a duct, because nobody knows to what extent.
Okay, now in interest of time, yes sir.
As a point of general surgeon, because when we enter there, we believe that it is a benign. Right? So we would, our main aim to preserve the nerve and do not damage anything and come out. So it is very likely that many of general surgeon may not have removed the deeper portion, though we always remove see the lingual nerve, but it is very common not to do it. That is what my mentality is, that as a general surgeon, you will go as a conservative surgeon.
So to make a point on Dr. Modi's point, the first point, submandibular gland swelling, stick a needle in. That we thought it was benign is incorrect. So everybody please go home with this view. The incidence of malignancy increases as the gland gets smaller. So please stick a needle in. 90% accuracy. You will get a diagnosis of adenoid cystic first. So always do that, have completion. Now 2 situations in interest of time. One, general surgeon operated. Residual disease, no residual disease. Residual disease, structural residual disease. Definite clumps of some things, suspect recurrence. We put a needle in, positive or suspicious. And in the other, totally excised submandibular gland, no wide margins. I don't know what are wide margins in submandibular salivary gland. I don't take out the lingual and the hypoglossal nerve. I don't think any of you all do. So, Kinjal, you've been the most quiet so far. What is the indication of giving post-operative adjuvant in this young socialite doctor who came with a nodule removed outside, good clean surgery, not multiple bits, adenoid cystic 1.8 centimeters.
High grade tumor we would definitely be treating.
Say that again.
High grade tumors.
What high grade? Adenoid cystic.
Yeah.
I am saying adenoid cystic, no high grade.
So,
Solid, whatever you want.
and the thing is,
do you all ask for solid and all? You do? I'm not sure.
They say it is a height.
See what he is saying. He is saying every adenoid cystic you have to give.
yeah. So the thing is, I would also like to talk to the surgeon. How
जोर से
well-
बोलो थोड़ा.
Yeah,
please.
so I would also talk to the surgeon how well he has operated. But this lady which you are talking about, I would be giving adjuvant radiotherapy to this lady.
So straight. So whenever you get a submandibular gland that's excised, have a look at the operative notes and plus minus imaging. If you have doubts that is gross residual disease left behind, consider for resurgery. No gross residual disease, you have to give radiotherapy. Kinchal, one more question for you. Photon or proton?
Doesn't make a difference.
Doesn't make
Doesn't
a
make a
difference.
difference. For a
Even for salivary?
For a salivary gland, doesn't make a difference.
In adjuvant setting?
In adjuvant setting.
In the palliative setting, gross disease, just to complete the
No,
discussion.
so the thing is, we have to understand, carbon has a higher chances of cure. You can give a lesser dose.
Response, maybe not cure,
yeah.
response.
So proton and photons are exactly the same. So it doesn't make a difference whether you go for a proton or a photon. For a skull-based tumor, there is an advantage of protons, not for
So
submandibular
again,
salivary glands.
youngsters in the crowd, heavy ions, whether it's carbon, whether it's neutrons, whether it is protons, seem to have some theoretical advantage in salivary gland tumors. But as Kinjal rightly says, in the majority of patients for control, in the adjuvant setting, if you give photons or protons, it will be more or less the same. Protons may have lesser side effects. That he will not.
No, I think there is some data coming that proton therapy leads to more ORM.
You know,
And skin reactions are also more. Skin reactions are more with protons.
I love this. Everybody is really into it. So this is a white journal paper that is quoting Nancy Lee's group, 10.4% ORN after protons. But read a letter to the editor after that. You didn't read that. Then you will understand. So she did say, he is absolutely correct. Nancy Lee's group said that the ORN rate is higher when she gave protons, 10% if I remember right. But we analyzed all patients at the Apollo Proton, and again my disclaimer, I'm only talking science. Rates much lower. Proton is also a learning curve, and conceptually there's no biological reason why you should have more. I can tell you one postulated, and I don't know, maybe Kinjal can add. You look at organs at risk, it's not part of this discussion, but since you've asked, the dose that you give to the mandible. Once you go above 42 with teeth problem, without teeth problem, they have their whole chart of giving. So with protons, you tend to be a little complacent. Maybe you've given more dose to the mandible. That need not be required. But point well taken.
So the only point I want to make it here is, when you treat any patient with protons, here you are treating point to point. So whenever there is any weight loss, you need to do a replanning. You have to be very careful in doing a replanning. A proton plan cannot go for 30 sessions for a stretch. If there is a 2 kg weight loss, you have to do a replan for a proton. So that is the reason there may be a higher dose to mandible and can lead to ORN.
Okay, this should have been my first slide. General observations. How common, how innocuous, how dangerous. Who wants to answer? Satakshi, I kept this question for you. I thought first the senior most, then the lady on the panel, then the more senior lady on the panel, and then open to the others.
So repeating to what has already been discussed, the size of the gland is inversely proportional to the malignancy risk. So we will consider that first in mind while dealing with non-parallel.
So important point, the smaller the gland, the more aggressive it is.
Yes. Coming to the question of how innocuous, majority of them, they do not tend to ulcerate, and a good portion of them can have submucosal extent, especially minor salivary gland tumors. And how dangerous will depend on the pathology of tumor. Unfortunately, much of it cannot be commented upon pre-operatively.
I'll put this up. You know, when we were young, we used to be taught 80% of salivary are in the parotid, 80% of them are benign, or 80% neoplan, 80% benign. So I'm putting this up if you want to elaborate on this. So I put parotid, submandibular, minor and sublingual. The diagnosis versus the risk of malignancy. The incidence of occurring. So I'll quickly say this. So parotid is the most common. So for every parotid, the number of submandibular, minor and sublingual you will have, that's the percentage for diagnosis. And the incidence of malignancy. So the higher you go, the sublingual has the highest incidence of malignancy. Submandibular and minor salivary gland 50-50%. And parotid is 20%. So again, reinforcing Dr. Modi's point, you're operating on submandibular, 50% chance that it's going to have a malignancy. Okay, great. Anything else left in submandibular gland? Nothing? All okay. Let me go to the next slide. So now I've put up various points. We've done the clinical signs, symptoms. Now I put up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 bullets. Each of you all take any bullet or make a comment on treatment of non-parotid salivary, what you feel you can give a message to the audience. And I told all of you all that that's the question I'm going to ask you.
So for establishing diagnosis, it's not as we do for parotid all the time that the FNAC is the first line investigation. As Dr. Satakshi said, a lot of them are submucosal. So these patients may need an incisional biopsy or a punch biopsy as well. So it's not only FNA when you are talking about non-parotid salivary gland malignancies. An incisional biopsy or a punch biopsy also has a role for diagnosis.
So I think an excellent point made by Karan. In parotid, our leaning on needle is higher than core needle or incisional biopsies in parotid. In all non-parotid, the leaning on another biopsy, whether it is core, whether it is incisional or whether it is punch, is different. So Nayan.
A true cut biopsy, core biopsy, because it will go to the depth.
So tell us when you'll do core, when will you do punch, when will you do incisional?
If the mucosa is smooth, the best way out is a core biopsy. Incisional would lead to a longer incision and, the mucosal cut would be longer.
So I think yeah, go ahead, Nayan.
The core would go deep inside. When you have a bulge inside, it's easy for you to, either a USG guidance is difficult, direct core would be okay, and that will give you the best outcome.
And when will you do incisional?
If the material is, you don't get a decent material on core, it's a secretory kind of a thing, then the only option left is an incisional.
I just wanted to say that
Purvi, after Vijay. After Vijay.
for the intraoral ones, what we do is we get the radiologist into the theater and we use that long the long probe that they use covered, and we can.
But why intraoral you need long probe if they're in
No,
theater?
just for guidance, for ultrasound.
Chota probe bhi jayega.
No.
Why do you want a long probe intraoral?
The fine ones are generally longer. So
Needle.
that's all, yeah.
Okay.
So,
Purvi.
location of a tumor is also important. If it is in the base of tongue, submucosal, you need a core biopsy. If it is in the palate, you can see patient has a good mouth opening. You can do FNAC and get a diagnosis. Sometimes it happens it is embedded deep inside, and your radiologist, as sir said, can help you. They can go from the submandibular region and take a true cut biopsy if you don't want to take patient under anesthesia.
So submandibular region into the base of tongue.
Yes.
So you want to do an image guided core, Dakshish?
Clinically, if we see that the lesion is submucosal or deep seated, then the radiology first will guide us how to go about to biopsy, whether the true cut from the skin, true cut from intraoral into the base of tongue, or whatever route. But radiology first will guide us about to tell us more about the route of the biopsy.
So I'll make some concluding and then we can move on. If the mucosa is ulcerated, wherever it is, don't bring your radiologist, do a punch biopsy. Whether it's on base of tongue, you don't have to go through the submandibular gland. You look at your Hopkins, mucosa ulcerated, punch biopsy. General anesthesia, punch biopsy. Anywhere, palate, kahin pe bhi ho. For base of tongue, if you can't get it. If you can't get it. If you can get it with the curved forceps, do it with the curved forceps. You need not with those small, thin, small bit of tissue, you need more tissue to get a diagnosis.
For a base tongue, otherwise I'm talking, a core is always better than a punch. In recurrent cases, when you are doing it under GA, it's difficult for you to reach that site. That's what my personal experience is.
For what?
You have a recurrent...
No, I am saying when the mucosa is ulcerated.
Yeah.
When the mucosa is ulcerated, it's very easy to reach. If it's a deep seated into the substance, we will do a core biopsy. Even in palate, the leaning is towards doing an incisional biopsy because you can't poke a core needle into the palate for a small lesion with the bone there. It's not easy to poke the core. They have to poke it in and then ream out a bit of tissue. So guidelines say that incisional biopsy by a good surgeon who does head and neck work is indicated. So the point I'm making is ulcerated tumor, punch biopsy. Core biopsy possible wherever. Core biopsy will be number 2. After the FNAC, the FNAC submandibular, you've got the thing, we will not do it. And if you can't do it, then don't think that incisional is a taboo. You can do a nice good incisional biopsy following principles of surgery and following principles of oncology, that scar must come out finally. You can do that. So this is the point on ectopic salivaries. Vijay and then Satakshi.
Yeah, very quick share. I've almost completely stopped incisional biopsies because in its place I use the dermatologic punch. It's very good. If you haven't used it, please use it. It's a 3 millimeter
Vijay, point
punch.
well taken.
Yeah.
You might do it. Your representation of tissue may not be adequate.
It's always adequate.
I'm telling you guidelines which the Europeans do, and I'm telling you guidelines what
There's a pure Indian.
No, so what I'm saying is that please go ahead and do a punch biopsy if you want, but a dermat punch will give you inadequate tissue. You have variegated appearance of the tumor. It's sometimes cystic. There could be necrosis in a pleomorphic adenoma of the palate. Vijay is lucky to get 100 on 100. The point I'm making is that don't shy away from an incisional biopsy. If you can do something less, it's okay. That is the teaching point. Vijay. Kaustubh.
Yeah, another thing is that, as Dakshesh rightly said, imaging first, biopsy second.
Granted.
And the second thing is, hypothetically, if this is a very small lesion,
correct,
you may not do an incision biopsy because you might violate the margins. You just do a wide excision. If the imaging shows that everything is clear, this is a 1 centimeter or half a centimeter kind of a lesion, you don't need to do an incision biopsy. There's few cases where you will not do incision biopsy.
Where? Tell me the location.
Or even on the palate.
So what do you do? Just excise it?
Yes.
Do you take out the bone? Don't take out the bone.
So that is what imaging will help. If it is stuck to the bone, if there is an erosion, incision biopsy. What I am saying is a 5 millimeter lesion, a nodule at any part in the oral cavity, you would not do an incision biopsy. You would do a wide excision and send it for histopathology. That
And
way you will do
supposing it
both
comes
the
back
things.
as adenoid cystic?
But I have a margin. I have done.
You have taken out bone or not taken out bone?
No, I will not taking out bone. My base is clear.
Look at the palatal anatomy. The mucosa is tightly bound to the periosteum.
Sir, in general, we start with an FNAC. FNAC gives us a fair idea about what we are dealing with, even the location, and we can make a further decision based on the FNAC report. Sometimes we also see lymphoma. So there are certain specific indications where you have to do a further incision or a core or a punch biopsy. And in certain indications where we can use that FNAC as a good report. And
so I would restrict the excisional biopsy certainly for sub-centimeter size submucosal tumors, where I am sure that I would be able to get good peripheral and even reasonable deeper margin, provided the bone is not eroded. That is one. The second thing is, in patients who have severe trismus, where you cannot do intraoral biopsies from base trunks, or recently I had a case, I'm sure Dakshesh knows about that, we did a true cut biopsy. It was difficult for us to get an angle. The radiologist said, I cannot do a true cut biopsy from outside also. So it was a difficult case, there was severe trismus. So these are tricky patients where you need to establish a diagnosis.
Point well taken, Satakshi, your comment?
Just to add to where the indications already discussed for core, of course, to rule out lymphoma or anything else, access issues with FNAC. FNAC is by and large good enough to differentiate between benign and malignant. But if we end up in malignancy, they cannot differentiate too well between
Granted.
subtypes. But benign, malignant, they can. If we end up in a very small subsect of sump or so, there is one school of thought that if it is more than 15 millimeter, 1.5 centimeters, a core biopsy may be advised. Because those patients have we trying to extrapolate as thyroid as indeterminate, but these patients have a higher risk of malignancy compared to thyroid.
So I'll agree with you, Satakshi, and I'm going to just put this in one line, then you can add, disagree, agree. In all ectopic salivary glands, non-parotid, try to establish the histological proof before you go in for surgery. Unless you feel that your excisional biopsy is not going to alter further treatment. Always establish. If you establish it by FNAC, now in order of priority, it will be FNAC, it will be core, it will be punch if ulcerated, and last it will be incisional. In between we can add the dermatological punch, that is also number 3 or 4. In this order, so please keep all 4 in your book. The last will be excisional biopsy unless you are sure your treatment will not alter, and I'll give you a case scenario again of one of my patients. Tell me.
No, I agree to what you say.
All agree? Lucky day, second day people. Yesterday Sarbani agreed with everything I said. Great. Lovely. Patient. Kaustubh's patient. Kaustubh means the situation he is making, not his. Kaustubh's patient, swelling submucosal in the cheek. Operated intraoral by a dental surgeon. report comes adenoid cystic. Orthopedic doctor from Delhi came and consulted me.
And they have put sutures also on them.
You also saw the patient?
Yeah,
Okay, lovely. No, same.
It was a joint consultation, you know.
Chalo, okay, great. Treatment, comments, teaching points for everybody.
I think it's a similar situation as we discussed earlier. Whether to wait for some time and to get an imaging to...
No, but let us tell them teaching points for prevention. Why should we wait?
Okay.
It's learning. Some of them will go back and do the correct thing.
No, if you are suspecting an...
Or they'll do excisional biopsy and then they'll come to us, then we'll have to wait for some weeks.
Okay.
Sorry, home 10 are coming. Okay. Aditya kidhar hai?
Anil, was it if it was a 5 millimeter thing that dental surgeon has excised with wide margins and the histopathology is this and the margins and
we will not excise with wide margin. Laddu tha.
no,
clinic mein le gaya, nikala.
histopathology will tell you whether he has excised it widely or not.
Who will excise a submucosal widely
5
in a
millimeter,
dental clinic?
5 millimeter thing.
Kaustubh, not even general, sir.
Okay, Deepak is looking unhappy. You say something.
What I want to say is that the first problem with almost all of us is that we never suspect malignancy intraoral. Intraoral.
Very good. Very good point.
Suspect this. That is the biggest problem. Forget about dental surgeon. This is a true set. Most of the time, what we believe is submucous cyst. Like that, and nobody removes it with wide margin. Forget about anything.
I
That
think
is the problem.
you told me he's a very experienced. I'm just believing you totally.
He is the
Points are
teacher.
bang on.
He is the teacher of many MCH surgical oncologists throughout India.
Points are absolute.
Two of them are sitting there.
Two of them are sitting here.
So
He is the teacher.
Dr. Modi, you brought lot of gravitas to this panel. Thank you. Boliye, Deepak, some comment.
Sir, if I...
Yeah, go ahead till Deepak warms up. Come on, go ahead.
So maybe in agreement with what KK...
Hello? Loudly.
Maybe in agreement with what KK sir was possibly telling, we will establish first whether gross disease has been left behind or not. We can do that.
No, I said prevention.
All adenoid cystic carcinomas will require radiotherapy, whether it's T1 as well.
So if there's no structural gross, they will go for radiotherapy. Otherwise, you will observe.
Yes. Otherwise, we will like to, if there is a question of gross disease remaining or not, by two ways
Revision surgery.
We can two ways establish that. One is to study the specimen that has already been excised, if there is tumor extending up to the surface. A second pathologist can tell that, or a pathology opinion, and of course waiting and reimaging. But that
So,
waiting and reimaging...
I
we
can
do
tell you,
for time.
Satakshi, 90% of cases that will come, the gross disease will be removed. It will reach the margins, they won't be residual, you'll only get post-RT. Post-surgical changes. That's what we normally, Deepak.
So I think in all scenarios that you've given with the submandibular removed 1.8, oral small lesion removed, sometimes what I find is really helpful is understanding what was the intent of the surgeon who went in first time. And if, for example, a surgeon told them, I'm going to take this out, I'm going to take a little bit of extra tissue so that whatever diagnosis I get, I'll be comfortable. If that's what they told the patient, I might feel satisfied with that operation, irrespective of who did it. But I think where it was like a diagnostic excision, as you said, casually done in the clinic, it tells you the intent was not oncologic to start with. I'm more skeptical on that operation. So, I mean, we use these all soft pointers to kind of judge
Whether to go in again. So
because I have excised.
So if you have a
lesions as
TX
well.
with no structural, will you go for radio or will you re-excise?
It depends. So if you have a mid-buccal lesion and let's say the patient's diagram showed a centimeter nodule, which you said excised in a clinic, it's mid-buccal, submucosal. I would be tempted to re-excise because re-excision to me adds no morbidity and it gets me margins that I would have done if I had a pre-op diagnosis. That's the operation I would have done. As for a mid-buccal lesion, it doesn't add any morbidity. You can go and get extra mucosa. You can get
But you will have to
line.
put a flap there with those
No,
sutures that
no,
Ravi
no,
saw.
No, not for a 1 centimeter tumor.
No, if he's taken 1 centimeter, he's put a long linear scar with 6 stitches. You take 1 centimeter on other side, how will you bring the two edges of buckle together?
This is the point I'm making. It's if you can do a good excision without adding the morbidity. I don't think every buccal
I'll tell you
excision-
90% of times you cannot do a good excision in a violated cavity and get primary closure. I'm telling you, and I want everybody else to do. Don't go into excise where you can get a primary closure, then you're hardly taking any margins. Which margin are you taking?
But if
You go deep, you'll go to buccinator. You'll go wide on the skins, 1 centimeter on those horrible sutures. That is the problem, Deepak. Otherwise, we will all excise.
If it is a structurally residual disease.
Surgery. That is no debate. That is no debate. A TX lesion. To me, the observation is between observe vis-a-vis radiotherapy.
So the problem is
You have to give radiation.
the problem is to make sure whether there is how can we confirm that there is residual structural disease or not? Many a time it's not processed. There will be some scar there. It is adenoid cystic, and your MRI will be showing some sort of edema or something. And so we are not sure whether there is anything left behind or not. In that situation, as Dr. Deepak was telling, we may be tempted to do it, and if required a flap, do it.
And required a flap, do it. So some people do that, they do a revision surgery, they put up a flap and there's no residual tumor in the tumor. And patients then, get a little, and then you want to give post-op radiotherapy as well.
Yes.
You will want to give post-op
Yes,
radiotherapy.
adenoid cystic. Yeah, that's all inbuilt in it.
No, I was saying just that. Just one important message I want to give. For the oral cavity, yes, adenoid cystic is a big exception, but otherwise, if you have to choose between re-excision and radiotherapy, I would any day choose re-excision for clear margins than to just subject the patient to radiotherapy.
Vijay, what you're making is a very casual statement. It may be a correct statement, but the problem in re-excision, we never know where is the residual disease.
Yeah.
In a violated, it's not easy. You have to go really wide. That we all agree with you that why to give radiotherapy, we will give re-excision. The problem is that still your margins will be unsure. You have to go by grade.
Here in the adenoid cystic, the problem is you re-excise, you put a flap, and still
there's no
radiotherapy has to be.
You have to give radiotherapy. So we are going to conclude this with 2-3 points.
Just a small point.
Yes, sir.
In this discussion. Nowadays, I saw a video 2 days before, and it is going to be a big problem for all of you. I am seeing many skin specialists removing these tumors. Whether you believe it or not, it's a fact. Now they are having laser and they remove it with laser. I don't know what is going to happen. This is a fact.
So point well taken. All specialities, why dermatology, why laser, it could also be max fax guys, could be general surgeons, could be ENT people in the clinic. Everybody doesn't have the same training expertise. So we are concluding. In this, and you all can disagree, agree, make more comments, add. Whenever you get a TX tumor, there are 3 options. Observe, re-excise or give radiotherapy. If there is structural residual disease, surgery is indicated. Agreed? If there is absolutely no structural disease, you look at the biology of the tumor, the histopathology. If it's a tumor that warrants radiotherapy, you will give radiotherapy to the patient. If it doesn't warrant radiotherapy, you will keep the patient under observation 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever. See how it behaves and then decide on re-excision. Comments, agreement, disagreement?
Agree to all points.
All agree?
Agree, sir. Agree.
All? Kaustubhai? Excellent. Now I'm going to end with one of my pearls. Any submucosal disease in the oral cavity, and the dental, where's Priyanka is there, she will agree with me this time. 50% of submucosal disease in the oral cavity are ectopic salivary gland tumors. please do not excise in your clinic casually. Don't take it as a small case, infiltrate 0.5 centimeters, 1 centimeter, establish diagnosis and take it out. It could be a pleomorphic, take close margins. But 50% of submucosal disease in the oral cavity are ectopic salivary gland tumors. Everybody's okay? So we finished this discussion. Panelists, choose another point. I don't think you'll have ever been on a panel where they give you an option of questions. Choose anything you're comfortable with. Not like Dushyant. Dushyant asking tough questions. Where's Dushyant? There he is.
So coming to the next point, site of occurrence.
Take any point.
Site of occurrence for that matter. With minor salivary glands, it's varied sites all across.
So name some sites that come into the head and neck domain.
Paranasal sinuses, larynx, oral cavity, oropharynx, pharynx, any mucosal,
place.
any mucosal
Excellent.
line. Why it is important to know which site it is? Because one, these sites behave a little different from each other. The treatment modality that you would be choosing for them would be different. Your surgical approach to these sites might be a little different.
Choose one site and give them pearls.
So if you have minor salivary glands of paranasal sinus or the external auditory canal, the chances of lymph nodal mets for that particular subsite is low. So just an excision of the primary can be the modality of treatment for them. You don't need to address the neck for every paranasal sinus or an external auditory canal site. Whereas if you have a minor salivary gland tumor of the oral cavity or the oropharynx, the risk of occult mets become higher. So these are the patients who would need an elective neck dissection as well.
Anybody wants to make any other points on the subsite that he has chosen, paranasal, nasal?
No, it's not, I agree with him, but the real troublesome thing, and I wonder if you can tackle it in this discussion, is none of us ever think of the lateral retropharyngeal node. Supposing it's a primary in the oropharynx, we never ever look at the lateral retropharyngeal nodes, and I think that's where we fail, in whether it's squamous or others. So I just want to know what is everyone's attitude for those nodes?
We'll park that discussion side for a moment because it's a very lengthy discussion, and there's a lot of good data on retropharyngeal nodes. But quickly to tell you, Vijay, by and large, when you have retropharyngeal nodes, it's non-operable. You can pluck it out, but it's usually taken care of by the radiation onc. So if you can take it out surgically and you're operating, you'll take it out and then he'll give adjuvant. Otherwise, you'll just send it to CT-RT. Just quickly, I'm telling you. But any other points on larynx, on any other points that, not larynx, sinonasal, Purvi, Satakshi?
So sir, any tumor which is in the larynx, minor salivary gland, if it is limited to only one side, can we go for hemilaryngectomy approaches, like open partial laryngectomy?
Point you have to make, madam. You're asking me question. Ye to ulta ho gaya. Moderator, you're asking me the question.
You are giving a lot of options.
You can't take up for her. You're on my side. You're on this is also. No, but the point is very well made by Purvi. But she said it softly. In larynx, the treatment is surgery. And you have to do surgery which is conservative. You can't lop out the whole larynx if you can do something hemi. So point very well made. So for all these cases, don't establish good diagnosis. And you know this by seeing that it's a submucosal disease. Establish diagnosis. Now here, I would go to my radiology guy, use the big needle, small needle, establish rather than cut the mucosa of the larynx. But sometimes we do that also. When we don't have it, we kind of incise at the AE fold, take out, shove the punch biopsy inside and take out tissue. Point well taken.
No, but for larynx, I must share, I have tried two approaches for these difficult ones which are submucosal. CT guided biopsies they do work with few people.
I did say that.
Few people, yeah.
I did.
And strangely, with a very skillful sonographer, We have one. in
So
our
image
hospital.
guided.
Yeah,
Let's say image
yeah,
guided,
but-
whatever
but-
you are, whatever you're
Yeah,
comfortable.
even from the perform sinus, you can get a good.
Yeah, so whatever you're comfortable with, it's not that it's a skill that whatever your radiologist is comfortable with, you can do. But quickly again, a point between oral and sinonasal. Sinonasal tend to recur more. Sinonasal tend to be more aggressive because you can't get good margins. So when you suspect an ectopic in the sinonasal region, you must establish the diagnosis well. Your imaging has to be very, very thorough, and you must have a good operative team, including people who can do various things. So I'm going to now jump and come to surgical approaches. Will you do them endoscopically? So where were we going to do endoscopic approaches, when we are going to do open approaches, and when we are going to do oral approaches?
So it depends upon one, the site of the tumor and how well versed are you with that approach. So it's not that you can't do an endonasal endoscopic approach for a paranasal minor salivary gland. It's totally acceptable if you are good at endoscopic surgeries. Same with open or robotic approach. If you are well trained.
No, qualify. Otherwise everybody, Dr. Modi told you, every surgeon has a big ego. He'll say, I'm well to do in this surgery. When you will do? Abhi wo point ho gaya. Not well adept. In sinonasal, when you will do endoscopic, when you will do open.
Okay, so certain established contraindications of doing endoscopic is when the skin is involved, anterior wall of the
Excellent.
maxilla is
So the
involved.
same, so tell the indications.
So whatever are the contraindications of endonasal endoscopic surgery in general applies to minor salivary glands
So
as
in
well.
minor salivary gland of the sinonasal, the thing that you have to look at, skin is rarely involved, but point well taken. If you have bone involvement, then you may not be going towards
Again, so
endoscopic
that's not an
resection.
absolute contraindication.
It's not an absolute, but I'm just highlighting the point. Bone eroded, you may have endoscopic assist surgery. So please remember that you might have to fenestrate the palate and take it out. So that's important.
Frank orbital involvement.
That's okay. So sinonasal we know, going on either side of the pupillary lines, going into infratemporal fossa, all that we will do not.
Those would be either combined or open, whatever.
Granted.
So that's one.
Point.
For oral cavity or oropharynx, it can be intraoral, it can be robotic, it can be laser.
So oropharynx will tend towards robotic surgery. For oral cavity, we'll tend towards oral surgery or a flap surgery as required. For larynx, we will go for hemilarynx, whatever we have to do to get a good margin. We won't do laser excision and have positive margins, but in some limited cases we may do. You agree? A-fold, isolated, free edge of epiglottis.
You can do a laser excision.
Granted. Point well taken. Satakshi.
Just to add one point, or maybe the same point, minor salivary gland tumors are staged as the site they are arising. So squamous cell carcinoma, oral cavity, and minor salivary gland, oral cavity are staged same way. So maybe our choice and approach will depend on the same indications and contraindications for the same sites, depending on size, depending on access, and depending on involvement.
Point well taken. So don't take minor salivary glands lightly. And her point on staging, which is the fourth bullet, major glands have a staging, but sublingual and all ectopics you stage as per the site where it occurs. Ravi.
No. Minor salivary gland tumor of sinonasal site. How would you, what procedure and what approach you will do to establish the diagnosis?
Endoscopic.
And that endoscopy you will do FES biopsy or you will do piece biopsy? What kind of biopsy?
You don't need FES because FES
I'm just asking for the
FES is inside the antrum, and these will not be like isolated intra sinus. So usually you shove in a scope and you'll get a good biopsy.
One point for the surgical approach for a palatal small tumor which is not eroding the palatal bone. We need that palatal bone for the margin. So, I don't know, many of you might have done, but since last few years what we are doing is we are removing No, not this big. I am talking about small lesion.
Tell me how you'll do this. What will you do for this?
No, but I want to make a point for a smaller lesion. What you can do is you can do a wide excision, keep the palate, remove the mucoperiosteum, and then what you do is with a ENT burrs, you burr out, remove only the palate, keep the nasal mucosa, put up STG. You will not require a palatal
Fenestration.
or anything.
Yeah, but you need not even go up to the nasal mucosa. If the bone is not eroded, you can do like they do JNA. They just burr the bone and they take it out with a round polishing burr.
No. What you do is the entire edge you burr, you see at the nasal mucosa, and then you.
And then you need not. Point well taken.
You can also inject from the nasal side onto the floor of the nasal cavity, so the mucoperiosteum sort of
Lifts up. That is also a good point. Bolo.
At the cost of sounding irreverent, sir, we are absolutely out of
Acha, stop. Okay, stop. So point well taken. But in these kind of lesion, I thought you're making some point. Okay. In these kind of cases, you have to distinguish whether it's a pleomorphic or a malignancy. Bol Rajendra, I'm getting off.
I think we must thank Pankaj. Because of him, the whole panel discussion took place.
And also also the rest of the panelists.
The
not
general
fair.
surgeon's perspective came up so well because of his comments.
That I appreciate.
I had to request him today morning. He had a surgery planned today morning. He did it fast and came.
So anyway, thank you everybody. Thank you Pankaj Bhai. I also agree with them. You brought lot of value add. But the rest of the panelists, I think all of you all also contributed well. Thanks so much everybody.